I never imagined my dad's callous words would lead to a heartbreaking discovery. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind that made the world feel fresh and new. Yet inside my heart felt like it was trapped in a dark storm. I can still hear his voice ringing in my ears, words twisted and sharp, cutting through my chest. "You'll never be good enough for this family." Those words carved a hole deep within me, a chilling echo that would haunt my every thought. I stood there, trembling, my hands pressed against the kitchen counter. The smell of burnt toast filled the air, mingling with the bitterness of tears I refused to let fall. Mom was in the living room, wrapped in her daily cocoon of silence, her eyes glued to the window like she was waiting for something that would never come. Dad's harsh words left a heaviness in the air, a thick fog that made it hard to breathe. My brother Ethan was supposed to be my ally, but even he seemed distant, lost in his own world of video games and teenage angst. Our family portrait hung crookedly on the wall, the smiles glossy and fake. I could feel the weight of it all, the hurt, the lies like a concrete block on my chest. But there was something deeper, something lurking just beneath the surface. I could feel it in the way the shadows danced on the walls, how the air buzzed with an unspoken tension. I often found myself wandering to the old attic, hoping it would hold secrets that could explain everything. This particular day, when I finally climbed the creaky steps, I was met by an unexpected sight: a box highlighted by a sliver of sunlight that broke through the cracks. Strangely adorned with ornate designs, it teased my curiosity. What was inside? I could barely breathe as I creaked the lid open, a cloud of dust drifting and swirling in the light. Inside lay a collection of faded photographs, some showing my parents in happier times, while others were too blurry or too dark to recognize. And then, nestled beneath, I found an envelope sealed with crimson wax. My heart raced with a frantic urgency. Why would they hide this? I lifted it gently, feeling the waxy symbol under my fingertips. My mind raced. Could this hold the answers I was seeking? I hesitated, my pulse quickening. The silence of the attic was deafening, pressing in on me like a weight that urged me to act. That's when I heard a scuffling noise from behind me. I whipped around, my breath hitching in my throat. Had someone been watching me? And in that moment I knew I couldn't go back. The truth was clawing its way to the surface, and I had to confront what lay hidden in that envelope. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The scuffling sound sent a jolt of adrenaline through me, and I spun around, my heart racing like a wild firefly. Shadows clung to the corners of the attic, thick and suffocating. I half expected to see a ghost of family secrets, or perhaps a sibling trying to invade my solitude. Instead, it was Ethan. His presence there felt like an intrusion, yet oddly like a shared refuge. "What are you doing up here?" he asked, an edge of annoyance coloring his tone, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. "I found something," I replied breathlessly, still clasping the envelope in my trembling hands. "You shouldn't be here. You never care about this stuff." Ethan rolled his eyes, but rather than turning away, he stepped closer, intrigued despite himself. "What did you find?" I hesitated, the weight of the envelope heavy between us. "I don't know yet. It feels important." He squinted at the box and smirked. "Probably just Mom's junk." But there was a tension in his voice, an unacknowledged curiosity hanging in the air. I took a deep breath, words nearly escaping me. But in that attic, surrounded by our family's discarded memories and unspoken truths, it felt as if the atmosphere shifted. "It's not junk." Dad's words, they're stuck in my head, Ethan. I can't shake them off. Ethan's expression softened. For once, it seemed as though he understood more than anyone else in our family. "Yeah, I heard him. He's something else," he said reluctantly, his voice low. "But it's not you. You've got to know that." His hesitance to defend me brought a new layer to our delicate sibling relationship, making my heart ache even more. Maybe I needed him more than I realized. What if it's true? What if I can't escape what he thinks of me? Before he could answer, I tore open the envelope with shaky fingers, a soft ripping sound breaking through the silence. As I removed the thick parchment within, my breath hitched. The paper unfolded into a letter, faded and worn, with spidery handwriting that was unmistakably my mother's. To whom it may concern, it began. I felt my pulse echo in my ears as I read on, the words telling a story of love and desperation, spilling over pages like a relentless river. The day I met him was the best day of my life. But the darkness always returned, creeping in with the shadows, feeding off my insecurities. I looked up, heart pounding, searching Ethan's face for any sign of understanding or revelation. What does this mean? Why would Mom write this? Is Dad really just a monster? Ethan took a step back as if the truth had struck him. I don't know. I've never heard Mom talk about this side, or really anything about their past. With each line I read, I felt the walls of our home tremble under the weight of undisclosed memories. It became a relentless dance of sorrow, each word unveiling a hidden part of the life I thought I understood. Ethan, I said, my voice trembling, we need to confront them. We can't keep living in the shadows of their failures. He shook his head slowly. You know they won't handle it well. We could end up just like them. A heavy silence settled around us, and for the first time in what felt like years, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. It mirrored my own uneasy reflection of the terrifying prospect of facing our parents and learning the truth of what lay beneath Dad's harshness. Just as I was about to voice my next thought, a loud crash echoed from downstairs, accompanied by a voice I recognized all too well, Dad's angry shouts. What do you mean it's broken? Blast it, I don't have time for your mistakes. Ethan's face paled, and it echoed my sudden wave of dread. We both understood an unspoken rule. Dad's fury could sweep us up like autumn leaves, dusting us with uncertainty and fear. The envelope still felt warm in my hands, its contents igniting a flame of determination. I had to know the truth now more than ever, even if it meant facing the storm brewing downstairs. But as we carefully made our way down the creaky stairs, the lingering question remained: was uncovering this truth worth risking the fragile facade we had built, or would it tear our family apart for good? Just then my phone buzzed in my pocket, a frantic message from Mom. We need to talk. It's urgent. A chill ran down my spine as I glanced at Ethan, and we shared a look of uncertainty. What could possibly be more urgent than the chaos we were already stuck in? The weight of the tension wrapped around us as we continued down, realizing that some conversations couldn't be postponed any longer. The moment we stepped into the living room, I felt the world shift, and a new layer of darkness enveloped us. In the oppressive silence of the living room, a sudden piercing scream erupted from my thoughts. It was almost as if it belonged to a shattered part of me, one that had always felt too out of place within the confines of our home. I stood frozen in the doorway, heart hammering in my chest, the urgency of my mother's message flashing like a warning sign. The room was a stark contrast to the storm of emotions swirling through Mike's shelves laden with framed smiles and serene family portraits. Yet behind those pictures lay an unspoken truth, one I now felt compelled to uncover. Mom? My voice trembled as I searched for her in the familiar chaos that marked our household. Ethan stood beside me, his hand twitching towards mine, an anchor in the rising tide of anxiety. It's about your father, came the quaking reply from the kitchen, tinged with an unusual softness that filled the air with tension. I could hear the rattle of utensils and the scuffling of chairs, each sound amplifying the heaviness in my chest. A flicker of concern passed through Ethan's eyes. He started but trailed off, the uncertainty weighing down his words. I nodded, swallowing hard as I took a step forward. We need to know, Ethan. If there's something we're missing. The thought of another buried memory made my stomach churn. I wanted to cry out that we had to confront this, but fear of what we might unearth held my tongue hostage. As we entered the kitchen, the sight sent shockwaves through me. Mom stood at the counter, her hands trembling as she stared at a knife, its silver sheen reflecting the overhead light like a beacon. Yet it felt more like a warning. Tears glistened in her eyes, a vulnerability I had seldom seen, unveiling a depth of suffering that was foreign to me. Mom? My voice cracked, slicing through the silence like the knife she had nearly dropped. She turned slowly, eyes darkened with worry but burning with an unspoken resolve. I couldn't keep this from you any longer. The gravity of her words weighed heavily, sending a ripple of dread through me, intertwining with a flicker of hope that somehow, we would find clarity in this chaos. The tension hung thick, the air electric with an impending confrontation. I glanced at Ethan, whose face was a mask of confusion and fear. "What do you mean?" he finally pressed, his voice low and steady. Despite his evident turmoil, Mom inhaled sharply, gathering courage. "Your father, he's struggling with something he refuses to speak of, something that's been festering for years." As she spoke, I could see the fight in her dimmed spirit. Those same shadows that had haunted her had now crept into my father, whispering monstrous lies that twisted his heart. Her gaze turned distant as she spoke, sharing a truth she had obscured from us for too long. "He's held on to a darkness, one that has consumed him since before either of you were born. It's not just anger, it's fear, a fear that if he loses control, he will repeat the mistakes of his father." My breath hitched in my throat, the words striking close to home, wrapping around my own insecurities. I thought of the relentless grip Dad had always had on us. A grip that transformed into suffocating restraint whenever he perceived failure. "And what about you, Mom? Why didn't you ever share this with us?" A flash of hurt crossed her features and my heart sank. "I thought protecting you would shield you from his pain. I was wrong." Ethan shifted beside me, his expression cracking as he struggled to piece the puzzle together. "So was he just like Grandma?" It was a question that hung in the air. A fraught inquiry about generational cycles that seemed destined to trap us all. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks like tiny rivers of agony. "Yes, but he's trying. I thought if we could help him find support." Maybe her words softened, fading into an unfillable void. They provided a flicker of empathy, an unexpected kindness that still struggled to mask the emotional chasm between us. "But how can we do that if he won't let us in?" I whispered, the weight of that realization settling heavily. Mom turned away, wiping her tears with trembling hands, the reflection of vulnerability drowning in desperate thoughts. "You two will have to decide that for yourselves," she said hoarsely. "But confronting the darkness within, especially in someone you love, is never easy." A sudden flare of hope ignited in my chest. Maybe there was a chance. A sliver of light piercing through the heavy fog of despair that had taken residence in our home. "If we stand together," I began but was cut off by the sound of a door slamming across the hall, a tremendous crash that echoed like a gunshot, sending a jolt through us. We exchanged wide-eyed glances, the fear making its way back into the corners of our hearts. "Dad," Ethan breathed as we rushed towards the source of the sound, uncertainty gripping us. As we reached the living room, the sight that greeted us stopped me dead in my tracks. There, amidst a scattering of broken glass and shards of a shattered vase, stood Dad, his face twisted in rage, every muscle in his body coiled tight like a taut wire ready to snap. "What are you two doing?" he barked, his voice thick with fury. The room felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Every glance exchanged between Ethan and me suffocating our unspoken questions and fears. "Dad, I hesitated, knowing that these words could either pull us apart or somehow untangle the chaos. And then, with a heart hammering in my chest, I proceeded. "We know about the letter. We know what Mom's been hiding." I swallowed hard, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me, as I braced myself for his response. The silence that followed was deafening, a terror-filled chasm that threatened to rip our family apart before it had a chance to heal. And then, just as I thought I saw the first crack in his armor, the doorbell rang, shattering the moment with a sharp, unexpected urgency. Each of us turned to face it, the gut-wrenching uncertainty hanging in the air. And in that second, the fragile thread of hope gave way to something darker brewing on the horizon. "Who could that be?" Dad snapped, his face contorting in frustration, revealing a flicker of vulnerability that hinted at the storm gathering within him. My heart raced as I exchanged another look with Ethan, the shadows of fear piling higher. And in that moment I knew, whatever awaited us on the other side of that door could change everything. The sound of the doorbell faded, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake, pregnant with anticipation and dread. Dad's expression was one of mounting frustration, but there was something deeper lurking beneath the surfacing anxiety that mirrored my own. "Answer it, please," I urged quietly, unsure if it was the desperate plea of a daughter longing to stave off confrontation or an instinctive nudge towards honesty that hung in the air. Ethan looked equally torn but nodded, moving cautiously toward the door. As he opened it, the sudden gust of wind fluttered inside, carrying the scent of rain and something sharper like the sharpness of unexpected tears. Standing on the threshold was a woman I didn't recognize, with curly hair framing a face etched with worry. Her eyes locked onto mine, filled with a strange mix of recognition and regret. "I'm sorry to intrude, but I needed to speak with you all," she said, her voice trembling slightly. There was an air of vulnerability about her that seemed almost familiar yet utterly foreign. Dad's posture stiffened, and I could sense the walls around him becoming more pronounced, as if he were fortifying them against a recurring threat. "What is it?" he demanded, his voice harsh, but beneath it lay layers of tremulous fear. The woman took a step forward, casting a glance past me to Mom, who had entered the hall, her expression clouded with confusion. "It's about your father," she said, her gaze landing heavily on Dad. Ethan and I exchanged a glance, our heartbeats synchronized in urgency. I took a cautious step closer, ready to listen to whatever revelation could further entangle our already complicated family web. Dad's hand tightened into a fist at his side, and for a moment, I feared the mounting tension might drive him to bolt or lash out. "I don't want to hear anything from you," he barked, the venom in his voice surprising me, something I hadn't anticipated from someone who had so long been the rock of our lives. "Please just hear me out. I didn't want to show up like this." It was a moment of weakness I never planned to repeat, she implored, desperation threading through her words. But she hesitated, as if gathering the bravery to continue. "I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't know how to tell you, and now I think it might be time." The room simmered with confusion, the air crackling thick with unvoiced questions. I couldn't understand the connection, nor could I fathom what might have befell our family to keep this woman at bay. "What do you mean?" Mom stepped closer, her voice soft but laced with tension. She seemed protective, a shield against this unexpected intrusion. "You don't know me, but the woman's breath caught as she steadied herself against the wall. "I was once part of your father's life before he was married. I'm his sister." The revelation hung suspended in the air, an invisible shackle wrapping around my heart. Dad's face blanched, his facade cracking like porcelain under pressure. "No," he whispered almost inaudibly as his world teetered, the ground shifting beneath him. "Please let her talk." I could barely hear my own voice as I pushed out words in the tense atmosphere, my heart both racing and quaking in disbelief. The woman's eyes glistened, a fragile light at the end of her darkness. "I loved our family too, but I made choices that distanced me. I thought that by disappearing, I could protect you all from the weight of my past. But it seems my past might be haunting us all anyway." As she spoke, Dad faltered, the impenetrable walls he had built around himself seeming to crumble ever so slightly. The woman's gaze softened, brushing along the memories of his life woven between regret and sorrow. It was a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm of years apart, to find something that could bind their fragmented family back together. "Please just listen," she continued, her voice steadying. "Your father has battled demons that you don't know about. I know it might not heal the scars," but she hesitated, taking a deep breath. "I think I can offer the support he needs. I want to help." The tension in the air shifted, veering down an uncharted path that terrified me. Dad's face remained a taut mask of disbelief, and I could almost see his internal struggle winning the battle against vulnerability. Suddenly, I was torn between the horror of this confrontation and the flickers of hope it offered. Perhaps there were answers waiting to be uncovered, secrets that could lead to beginnings we hadn't dared to dream. "Get out," he said finally, his voice breaking like thunder, reverberating through the room. "You're not welcome here. You caused enough pain." His words were like a cold slap, reverberating through us all. The woman recoiled as if struck, a flash of hurt flashing across her features before she steeled herself, refusing to back down. "I won't give up on you, Daniel," she said softly, her voice rising gently like a whisper across a troubled sea. It was Dad's name, his first name barely uttered but powerful enough to elicit a stillness that enveloped the room. His breath hitched in a nearly imperceptible gasp. The tension felt like oil igniting beneath a driving spark, the fire ready to explode, leaving all of us caught in the aftermath. "Ethan," I reached for my brother's hand, feeling the tremors in his veins through our contact, both of us on the precipice of something we hadn't anticipated, and then, as if summoned by our collective anguish, the door slid shut behind us, sealing the outside world from chaos and calamity. But it wasn't just the woman's abrupt presence that unraveled, there was something heavier lurking in the shadows, waiting for a moment of vulnerability to strike. Whatever it was, it looked intent on tearing apart every shred of hope we'd just glimpsed before I could turn toward Dad. He stepped back, shaking his head fiercely as he backed away from us, away from the woman, shadows overtaking his frame. With that movement, it felt like the light dimmed drastically in the room, leaving us suspended between darkness and uncertainty. The air felt charged with unspoken truths, heavy with the weight of betrayal and regret. I could almost taste the lingering despair mixed with the scent of rain-soaked earth outside. The world outside oblivious to the tumult within. "Dad!" I cried, desperation bleeding into my voice, but he was gone, retreating to a past he could no longer bear to face. With those words, the fragile thread that had been woven among us snapped, and I felt an overwhelming dread creep into my heart. "I think we just opened Pandora's box," Ethan murmured, pushing his hair out of his face, lost in thought. Guilt washed over me, and I felt as though we had summoned storms down upon ourselves, storms that would rip apart the fragile facade of our family if we weren't careful. The woman stood there, a fragment of hope and despair intertwined, a living embodiment of the truth too painful to confront. And all I could think was that whatever path awaited us now, there would be no turning back. With the door clicking shut behind my father, it felt as if the air had thickened into a suffocating mass. The womb in me newfound aunt stood before us, visibly shaken but determined, as if she bore the weight of years of silence and regret all in one breath. I felt the tremors coursing through my limbs, disbelief mingling with a profound sadness that settled like a stone in my gut. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words escaping me almost instinctively. It seemed inadequate, but I felt compelled to acknowledge the hurt this situation had wrought upon her. Despite my father's rejection, she met my gaze, her expression softening as if the recognition of my sympathy offered her a flicker of comfort. "I understand," she said, her voice cracking but laced with a delicate strength. "It's not just your father's pain. It's a family wound that no one escaped unscathed from." Ethan cleared his throat, stepping closer to me as though seeking solidarity. "What do you want us to do?" he asked, the tone of his voice hovering between curiosity and caution. "I just hope to take a step towards healing, to bring a piece of his past into light," she replied, each word carefully crafted like fragile glass. "Maybe if I can explain my choices, he might find it in his heart to forgive not just me, but himself." Her words struck me, ricocheting in my mind. Forgiveness felt as foreign and distant as the stars, obscured behind the clouds of anger and shame. I wanted to believe there was a way forward, yet the ache of the present sat heavily on my chest, suffocating hope as it manifested. And I found myself wishing to know the answers, the why of her departure, the secrets that had cleaved our family apart, and most importantly, why this woman had returned now. "What do you mean by his demons?" She inhaled deeply, the air seeming to wrap around her like a sweater against the chill of the moment. "Your father had a hard childhood, one filled with darkness that pushed me away, made me think that by leaving, I would give him a chance at something brighter. I didn't want to burden him with the broken pieces of my life. But the truth is," she hesitated, "he might have been carrying scars that were even deeper than mine." My chest tightened. It was shocking to think of my father, always the stoic pillar of our family, as someone who had been wounded rather than simply the stone facade that had loomed large throughout our lives. "Daniel saved me many times," she continued, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I was too afraid to let him know just how much he meant to me. The guilt consumed me, and I couldn't face him again, not when I had taken so much from him." Ethan exchanged a glance with me, and in that unspoken conversation, I saw the flicker of understanding. Our father was more human than we had allowed ourselves to see for so long. "But how do we make him listen?" I whispered, a mix of fear and hope balancing on the precipice of my desire to reach him. "He won't even let you." "We don't," she interrupted softly. "It's not about forcing him to listen, but rather reminding him that he doesn't have to navigate this alone. Perhaps if he sees it's not just him carrying these burdens." And then I remembered the whispers I had heard in the dead of night, my father's muffled cries, his unyielding vigilance over his emotions. My heart twisted as the fragmented pieces began to reassemble into a dull ache of compassion mingled with despair. He had been struggling in silence, cloaked beneath layers of unspoken grief, and we had unknowingly stood at the edges, oblivious to his suffering. Suddenly, the tension shifted in the room, and a small part of me suggested that maybe we could open channels of communication, that perhaps healing was still an option. "Mom is worried too," I said slowly, glancing towards the staircase. If we could all talk, her expression softened, gratitude emanating like a gentle breeze. I'd like to meet with her. I believe she has every right to know the truth as well. It's not too late to bridge these divides, dear child. Sometimes I think that an honesty buried beneath years of pain can bring families closer than they ever thought possible. But just as a glimmer of optimism arose, the moment shattered like glass when from the shadows we heard footsteps. The door slammed open, revealing our mother's silhouette, and with it came an impending storm. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her eyes darting swiftly between the woman, us, and the chaotic remnants of our family unraveling at the seams. Time seemed to stretch painfully as silence enveloped us, punctuated only by the sounds of thunder rolling in the distance, mirroring the tumult brewing within the room. My heart raced, hope and dread clashing violently as the reality set in. Wed opened a floodgate that could no longer be controlled. "Lola," the woman began, her voice shaky but resolute, "we need to talk." All of us but Mom's eyes narrowed, filled with the same fierce protectiveness I had witnessed earlier. "Talk?" she echoed incredulously. "What could you possibly have to say that would matter after all this time?" Before the woman could respond, an unexpected shift occurred. Dad's shadowy form emerged from the back of the house. His face was twisted with an emotion I could not quite pinpoint, a mixture of anguish and determination that sent shivers running through the air. He stepped into the light, the dark clouds of looming rain hiding neither his expression nor the trembling that curled around the edges of his strength. "What is she doing here?" His voice was low, reverberating with an intensity that sent electric currents throughout the atmosphere. A palpable tension surged, and I could feel the walls of our home tightening around us, sealing the outside world away, leaving us trapped within our unresolved past. In this moment I realized we were standing on the precipice of a revelation that could either shatter us completely or ignite the spark we so desperately sought. And as the storm swelled outside, it felt like the universe was holding its breath, waiting for us to uncover the truth hidden deep within our tangled family narrative. I stood frozen, caught between my father's stormy glare and the palpable tension that thickened the air around us. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm as echoes of disbelief played in my mind. My father, who had always been unwavering, his words now a sharp blade that sliced through the fragile silence of our family's history. "Why can't you just let it go?" His voice cracked, revealing a vulnerability beneath his fierce facade. "You have no idea the damage you left behind." "Damage?" My aunt's voice trembled but filled with conviction, shaking off the hurt like a worn-out coat. "I came back to mend what was broken, Daniel. I didn't know how else to do it, but staying away, pretending like everything was okay, it nearly destroyed me. And you burst into flames carrying it all alone." The jagged edge of her words pierced the air, igniting a flicker of something in my father's eyes, fear or perhaps regret, but it fluttered away as quickly as it had appeared. Instead, anger coursed through him, curling his hands into tight fists. "You think it's that simple?" I watched as my mother stepped up beside my father, her protective instincts igniting a fire in her eyes. "What do you want from us now, after all these years?" she demanded, her voice steady but laced with an underlying fear. "Lola, please," my aunt began, her gaze shifting to my mother as if searching for the common thread that could unite them. "I know this is hard for you, but Daniel and I." "Daniel?" my mother snapped, her voice rising as she took a step forward. "You call him that now? After all the time you've abandoned him? Do you think you can just waltz back in and pretend like this is your chance to right the wrongs? To fix everything?" "Mom!" I cried, trying to interject before the chasm widened further. "Please let her talk. Everyone deserves a chance to explain." But in the intensity of the moment, it felt like words alone would do little to stitch together the deep fissures our family had endured. I realized this confrontation was not merely about resolving the past, it was about peeling back layers of grief and betrayal that had quietly built themselves into mountains of rage. Ethan stepped beside me, an anchor amidst the turmoil. "We need to hear what she has to say," he urged. "It might help us understand why everything fell apart." Both our mother and father shifted, reluctant compliance hanging thick in the air. And for a fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of hope threaded through the despair. Maybe this could be the beginning of revelation, of understanding, the very healing we so desperately needed. "Please," my aunt whispered, her voice barely audible against the rumble of distant thunder. "All I ask is the opportunity to share my truth. I owe you all that much." Something flickered in my father's eyes again, A flicker of the man I remember, a man who took pride in being the center of our family, the rock that never faltered. But now, his features revealed the internal struggle as he wrestled with his emotions, the storm breaking against the walls he had built around himself. Fine, he muttered, his voice low, yet powerful enough to echo within the confines of our home. But you better be prepared to own your actions. Why? Aunt nodded, a mix of relief and determination washing over her. I will, she promised, drawing in a deep breath that seemed to bolster her courage. I know that my choices caused pain, but please realize I made those choices out of love, hoping that it might spare you all more hurt. With each word she spoke, a layer of the fog that cloaked our sorrows began to lift, and confusion stirred within me. Was it really true that love could lead to such devastating choices? I had never considered that my family's silence could have stemmed from a well-intentioned desire to protect one another, rather than a cruel neglect. Yet, just as a glimmer of understanding began to take root, another crack of thunder shattered through the room, vibrating through the walls, and the atmosphere shifted again, darkening with uncertainty. Outside, torrential rain began to pour, and as I looked through the window I saw the world shifting as raindrops danced across the pane. Daniel, my aunt continued, her eyes filled with anguish, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought by leaving I could free you. But it appears I've only tied you closer to the very pain I wished to avoid. I can't take back my decisions, but I am here now. Please, let's talk, let's try to understand each other. But before my father could speak, an unexpected voice rang out, laced with innocence. Dad? It was my younger sister, Olivia, standing at the top of the stairs, clutching her teddy bear as if it were a lifeline. Her eyes, wide and glistening with confusion, darted between our mother and father, and then to the stranger who had breached our family's fragile peace. What's happening? The collective tension escalated, and I felt my heart drop. This was a precarious moment, an innocent child caught in the maelstrom of adult conflicts. A moment that could either tear our family apart further, or provide a path for healing. Olivia, sweetheart, my mother said, her voice softening, yet threaded with urgency. It's complicated, but we're trying to figure things out. Please go back upstairs. No, Olivia insisted, her small voice unwavering. I want to stay. I can help. I might know things. With a heart full of dread, I turned to share a glance with Ethan, a silent acknowledgement of the unraveling layers of our family's history, each layer an uncharted territory filled with raw emotion. The rain pounded against the windows, a fierce backdrop to the heart-wrenching dialogue about to unfold, as we braced ourselves for whatever revelations might come next. And with my sister's innocent declaration hanging in the air, a part of me couldn't help but wonder what else was hidden beneath our family's surface, a truth that, once revealed, might change everything we thought we knew. The rain intensified, each droplet drumming against the windows like a relentless heartbeat, mirroring the turmoil within me. Our home, once a sanctuary, felt like a fragile vessel teetering on the brink of destruction, and now Olivia's presence stirred a new complexity. Olivia, please, I urged softly, stepping closer to her. You don't have to be here. It's immature stuff. She shook her head stubbornly, looking up at me with that familiar fire. I know. I heard things, Daniel. Every time you guys fight, I listen. I don't want you to be hurt again. I want to help. Her voice quivered slightly, but the defiance behind it fortified my spirit. No, you need to go back. This is not for you to hear, my father cut in, his tone sharp as glass. But Olivia stood her ground, and I felt my heart ache as I watched her fight to remain part of a family battle she clearly wasn't equipped to handle. Daniel, my aunt interrupted, her gaze fixed on Olivia, her expression a kaleidoscope of sorrow and worry. If she wants to stay, maybe she should. Children see and understand more than we think. What I didn't know could have changed everything. And maybe she's holding some answers. My father's frown deepened, the lines on his forehead setting into a grimace. This isn't a place for childhood innocence, Lena. We need to address. I have to know, Dad. Olivia interrupted, her small voice echoing through the turmoil. I can show you where I always hid the letters. All eyes turned toward her. Letters? I asked, a creeping realization dawning upon me. Yes, she said, her cheeks flushing crimson as she shifted her teddy bear into her other arm. You remember the ones you found in the attic, right? There are more. I wanted to help you find them. Her words tumbled out in a whirl of urgency. I thought they were important, But I didn't know that a tension-filled silence blanketed the room as the significance of her words sunk in. "What letters, Olivia?" my mother asked, her frustration giving way to genuine curiosity. Olivia clasped her teddy bear tightly, her gaze flickering between the adults in the room. "The letters from Aunt Lena to you, Dad." I thought they were exciting with fancy words and pictures. They didn't feel sad. They felt like stories. "I kept reading them when you weren't home." My aunt's expression hardened, a flicker of regret crossing her face, but our mother's eyes widened. "What do you mean you kept reading them? Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wasn't supposed to," Olivia burst out defiantly, her voice rising, a cry of innocence mixed with childhood indignation. "It was a secret, like how you always tell me secrets about why we don't talk to Aunt Lena. And I wanted to keep it safe for you." Suddenly the room felt suffocating. A storm was brewing that threatened to reveal truths none of us were prepared to confront. "That's enough, Olivia." My father's voice was clipped, a desperate attempt to shield her from the brewing storm. "No. I want my family to be happy. I want you all to talk." "I'm tired of the secrets," Olivia said, her small body trembling. "I don't want to lose you like I lost Mom's mom." My heart broke at her words, the innocent truth crashing into the hardened walls we had erected around ourselves. My father's own resolve floundered under the weight of his daughter's vulnerability, caught between his protective instincts and the anguish he had long sought to suppress. "Lena," my mother began, her voice softening, "if Olivia knows of these letters, this might be a chance to understand what transpired. We can't ignore this." "I didn't want her involved in this mess," my father spat, frustration seeping into his words, but the desperation in his daughter's eyes made his resolve waver. "Please," Olivia pleaded again, and I felt the tug of a new possibility, one rooted in shared vulnerability instead of hidden truths. "Maybe we should look at the letters together," I suggested a bit hesitantly. "They might give us more insight. If they hold pieces of the past, we could finally connect those missing dots." "Are you sure?" my aunt asked, her expression wavering between hope and trepidation. "I am scared," Olivia whispered, her voice now trembling. "But I also want to understand. Please, let's try." A heavy pause consumed us before my father finally exhaled. "Fine, but this is going to get messy." "Lives messy," I replied, my heart racing as I turned to Olivia, whose small form was a beacon of untainted hope. "It might be uncomfortable, but we'll face it together. Right, Olivia?" She nodded solemnly, eyes shining through glossy reflections of resolve. As my parents exchanged weary glances, we plunged into uncertainty, but within that uncertainty, the dimmest spark of possibility flickered. Perhaps the rain outside was washing away more than just the day's frustrations. It promised to cleanse our history, one revealing letter at a time, if only we were brave enough to let it in. But just as the shards of hope began to weave through our hearts, our front door burst open, propelled by a gust of wind, and an unexpected figure emerged, drenched in rain and gasping for breath. "Daniel, I need to talk to you now." The urgency in his voice sent a chill down my spine, and all the warmth from our fragile moment was immediately stripped away, leaving us cloaked in a new layer of dread. It was Ethan's brother, Noah, his face streaked with panic and desperation. "It's about Mom." And in that instant, with the shadows lengthening around us, I realized whatever was coming could change everything once again, leaving us to navigate through even darker waters of an already broken history. The air thickened with anticipation as Noah stood in the doorway, rain streaming from his disheveled hair. His eyes darted to each of us, relaying a tempest of emotions I could hardly decipher. Anguish, anger, confusion, each flitted across his face, a mirror of the churning storm brewing behind him. "Mom, she's gone." The moment those words left his lips, an icy wave crashed over me, jarring every fiber of my being. No, not her. Not now. We hadn't even begun to unravel our own tragedies. "What do you mean gone?" My voice trembled, desperation clawing at me. Noah stepped into the living room, each footfall heavy with the weight of unsaid truths. He was a storm all on his own, raging with grief that threatened to engulf us all. "I just got a call from the hospital." She collapsed. "They couldn't save her." A sickening silence ensued, wrapping around us like a shroud. I looked at Olivia, her face paling, eyes wide as she sought answers but found only confusion reflected back at her. My mother gasped softly, pressing a hand to her mouth, while my father remained stone-faced, though I could see his knuckles whitening as he balled his fists at his sides. Not like this, I whispered, shaking my head in denial, wishing this moment could shatter and reveal that it was all just a cruel nightmare. Couldn't be true. Our family was already too fractured to bear another loss. Daniel. Noah's voice broke through my thoughts, raw and pained. I tried to reach her earlier, but she was unresponsive. I thought she was just ignoring me again. But his words faltered as he sank into a nearby chair, hands gripping his head as if trying to contain the internal chaos. My God, my mother's voice cracked, and she quietly began to cry, her tears echoing the devastation that coursed through every one of us. Why didn't anyone tell me? I found myself shouting, confusion morphing into anger. I could have done something. I thought I could handle it. Noah's voice surged, fierce but broken. She didn't want to be a burden, Daniel. You don't know how many times she refused help. All she wanted was. He stopped abruptly, inhaling sharply, and suddenly I saw the flash of bitter regret in his eyes, a confession unspooling from him like a tangled thread. I turned to my father, whose stoic facade was beginning to crack. You knew, didn't you? I accused, anger pouring out of me like rainwater from a leaky roof. You knew she was sick and didn't say a word. How could you? It was complicated, he shot back, his voice taking on a low growl. Your mother has always been stubborn about reaching out for help. I thought she was getting better. I thought we had time. What if we didn't? I cried, exasperated by the torrent of vulnerabilities now laid bare. What if she stopped it, Daniel? My father's voice rang out in sharp reprimand, but it was Olivia who made me pause. Mom's sick? She asked softly, fear lacing her voice like a tight string pulled too taut. In the chaos, I had forgotten she was still in the room, her small form trembling. No, sweetie. No. I knelt before her, desperate to shield her from the truth that was crashing over us. We'll figure something out. You don't need to worry. But her eyes, filled with innocent horror, told me she sensed the gravity of what was unfolding, even if we tried to treat her like a child. If it's true, Noah's voice trembled, breaking into a vulnerable whisper, then she needs all of us. We should have all been there. The weight of his words sank in, each syllable ricocheting through me like a haunting echo. We had spent years divided by our own pain, letting misunderstandings separate us, and now we risked losing the chance to mend those scars as a family. But what can we do? I faltered, unable to voice the unspeakable finality that lingered in the air. Noah suddenly straightened, urgency sparking in his eyes. We need to go to her. We need to say goodbye together. She wouldn't want us fighting like this. His words ignited something deep within me, and in that moment a surge of determination blossomed despite the fear. I motioned for Olivia to join me, and she reached for my hand, her small fingers tightening around mine. We can't let anything divide us right now, I asserted, feeling the fragile thread of hope stitching us together anew. My parents exchanged hesitant looks, a flicker of understanding igniting between them as they grasped the gravity of the moment. I could sense the world tipping on its axis, threading the past, present, and future into an uncertain tapestry. Just as I took a step forward, ready to rally my family toward the unknown, Olivia's soft voice cut through. But what if I'm too late? What if? Share question hung in the air like thick fog, wrapping around my heart with unyielding bitterness and fear. Before I could respond, the door burst open once more. A woman stood at the threshold, soaked from the rain and shaking with her own panic. Is this the Smith residence? I need your help. Her frantic tone sliced through the tension, her eyes wild with urgency. It's about Rebecca. You have to come now. And just like that, the fragile thread of hope we began to knit unraveled into chaos once again, leaving me astounded at the ripple effects of life's unexpected disasters. As I stood frozen in the eye of the storm, I knew whatever awaited us beyond those doors could alter the course of our family's story forever. The storm outside had become a relentless drumbeat against the windows, but it mirrored my internal turmoil. The woman at the door was a stranger, yet her presence felt like the harbinger of catastrophe. My heart raced, each thud echoing the suffocating uncertainty in the room. Please, you have to hurry, she implored, urgency tearing at her voice. Rebecca's at the hospital, that's where they brought her. I heard she was alone. I felt a jolt at the mention of my mother's name. What do you mean alone? What happened? I asked, my voice barely steady as the implications washed over me like ice water. There was an accident, the woman said, each word laced with an evident fear that made me want to recoil. The hospital called for us for family. Noah moved first, striding towards the door like a ship setting sail amidst a tempest. Then what are we doing standing here? He urged, a tidal wave of resolve propelling his words. I could see the flicker of determination within him, altered but still aflame, fighting against the swell of despair. Olivia! I shouted while racing after Noah, calling back to her. But she remained rooted, confusion swirling in her wide eyes as she pointed towards our mother's empty chair. What if she's really gone? What if we're too late? Her innocent fears clawed at my heart, but I had to rally us for her sake, for everything my mother meant to us. No, don't think like that. We can't give in to despair. We're not losing anyone else tonight, I urged, gripping her tiny shoulders gently. We're going to see her together, all of us. My mother had turned pale, her grief mingling with fear, but deep within, I caught a hint of strength flickering in her gaze. Let's go, she announced, her voice steady. If there's even a chance she's still. If there's a chance we could help, she trailed off, unable to finish. I nodded, drawing Olivia closer as we all rushed out into the torrential downpour. The rain, once a barrier of chaos, felt like cleansing tears cascading from a grieving sky. We piled into Noah's car, the somber atmosphere wrapping around us like a heavy cloak, each of us lost in our thoughts as the windshield wipers struggled against the onslaught. The ride felt interminable, every passing second thickening the air with dread. My mind raced through memories of my mother, her laughter, her comforting hugs, the way she sat with us during our darkest hours, always ready with wisdom and warmth. But now, her voice felt like a distant echo, threatening to disappear forever. Noah's hands tightened on the wheel, determination painted across his face, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of terror. What if she wasn't at the hospital? What if there was nothing we could say or do to bring her back? Those questions tormented each of us, unspoken but palpable in the confined space. When we finally arrived, the hospital loomed like a dark sentinel against the downpour, its bland facade stripped of comfort. A hospital room was a place designated for healing, yet the somber air that surrounded it felt oppressive and heavy with sorrow. As we hurried inside, the sterile smell overwhelmed me, a reminder that this was a domain of harsh realities. The waiting room was nearly empty, a few souls lost in their own grief, quietly awaiting news that was often cruel. The woman who had led us began to walk away but turned back, her face wet with raindrops and anxiety. I'll go find someone who can help. Just don't lose hope. She disappeared into the shadows, leaving us floundering in uncertainty. I ushered Olivia to sit beside my mother, whose hands trembled as she clutched onto her purse. Noah paced, his restlessness emanating off him like a charge of electricity, while my father sat quietly, seemingly lost in his thoughts, perhaps re-examining the choices that brought us to this moment. Isn't there someone we can talk to? I pressed, frustration gnawing at me. Someone needs to tell us what's going on. We deserve to know. Daniel, my mother sighed, her voice fragile, this isn't how it works. We have to wait. Time stretched painfully, and every tick of the clock pierced my heart. Further. I grabbed Noah's arm, but it was clenching into a fist. We should have been there. We should have seen this coming, he muttered, despair flooding his voice. I didn't think, shed Beelwan. Suddenly a nurse approached, her expression grave yet gentle. I'm sorry. Are you family of Rebecca Smith? The room narrowed around me, the sound of my heart pounding reverberating against the stark walls. Yes, we're her family. I found myself standing, urgency spilling over me. Is she okay? Where is she? I'm afraid there have been complications. She needs you, but the words never left her lips. Noah and I exchanged a panicked glance, our breaths catching as the walls felt ready to crumble. The nurse seemed to hesitate, her eyes flickering uncertainly, and suddenly, Olivia latched onto my arm with an urgency that stopped my breath. Wait. She cried, her voice small yet loud in the silence. What do you mean complications? I felt time stall. The world narrowed to the look of fear adorning my sister's face. The weight of the unknown pressed against us, and I could only hold my breath, desperate to inhale clarity as the storm continued beyond those stark walls. What if the hope we clung to would shatter in an instant, crueler than the thunder outside? Just then, I caught sight of Noah's stricken face, his eyes lingering on something behind the nurse, a flicker of movement beyond the doorway. And all at once, I recognized the grim finality lighting up his expression. Something deeper, darker than any storm had found its way into our lives, and we stood at the edge, teetering above the abyss of despair, waiting for the inevitable wave to crash down upon us. The world faded away as the nurse's words echoed in my ears, blurring the line between denial and dread. I was suddenly acutely aware of every detail: the sterile smell of antiseptic, the flickers of fluorescent lights overhead, the muffled beeping of machines in the distance. Each sound pressed on my heart, amplifying the weight of fear that sat atop my chest like a leaden stone. There was only one connection I could make in that moment, and I feared it with every fiber of my being. Complications? I gasped. What does that mean? What happened to her? My body trembled with disbelief, my mind scrambling to comprehend the implications, but the nurse remained rooted in her compassion, offering a glimmer of a smile that felt sent from a place where hope might still exist. She's in critical condition. We're doing everything we can, but she needs to be stable before any decisions can be made. You should be ready for anything. Just then, the words hung in the air like an MC Escher drawing futile paths spiraling into darkness that led nowhere. We have time to see her, right? No one could answer me. We all stood suspended in a reality we had not prepared for, our family heart shattering under the pressure of the unknown. No. Olivia's small hand clenched more tightly around my arm. I want to help. I want to see Mom. Olivia, my mother's voice trembled as she knelt beside her, brushing a wayward strand of hair behind her ear, a flicker of pain reflected in her eyes. It's okay. We're going to be brave together, but we need to be strong for your mother. Brave? I echoed, feeling the bitter taste of fear. What if that's not enough? The haunting realization settled over me like an oppressive shroud. What if we lost her? The thought latched onto my heart, squeezing tightly until my breath quickened and tears threatened to spill over. A heaviness loomed, rooted deep within us, spiraling with timelines we had never imagined, facing the storms we had kept carefully at bay clashing violently at last. Another nurse appeared, and I felt a wave of urgency wash over me as she approached our small huddle. Yet her expression was soft, tender, almost maternal. You can see her now if you wish. Just a moment, I promise. The words hit with a force I wasn't ready for, and I hesitated as every moment of my mother's warmth and laughter rushed through my thoughts. Could it really be one last chance to reach her? Or was it a farewell? My heart raced in tandem with the chaos of feelings, trapped between fear and a flickering desire to grasp whatever time I could with her. For a brief moment, I looked toward my family. The connection between us felt fragile amidst the growing uncertainty. We need to do this together, I said, my voice hoarse but firm. This is our chance. As I squeezed Olivia's hand, I felt her small frame trembling beside meth sweetness of childhood innocence battling the stark reality we were about to confront. Please don't let go, she whispered, the plea breaking the dam of emotion I had been trying to hold back. I assured her, feeling a fierce resolve ignite. We go in as one. Together we stepped into the room, a stark fluorescent light flooding the space, casting harsh shadows across our faces. And there she was, our mom, lying on the bed, surrounded by the sterile trappings of medical equipment that buzzed in activity, and yet her heart, her spirit, seemed to call out to us beneath the chaos. Mom. Olivia squeaked, her voice wavering, and in that instant, we were enveloped in a tidal wave of memories that crashed against Usher laughter, her strength, her endless love. I watched my mother's eyes flutter open, revealing a pool of warmth and recognition intertwined with fatigue. Oh, my babies, she murmured, her voice gravelly yet tender, each word breaking through the wall of silence that encased us like a fragile crystal. Mom. I rushed forward, tears slipping unbidden down my cheeks. We're here. We're all here. Olivia, sweetheart, she croaked, tears pooling in her eyes as she reached for my little sister. You shouldn't be here, but I want to help you. Olivia cried, scrambling up onto the edge of the bed, her small hands sinking into the sheets. We heard you were sick. You have to get better, Mom. The fierce spark of love ignited in that moment, wrapping around us, reminding me of the collective strength that lay dormant. We're going to help you heal. We promise. I choked out, the sincerity settling over the room like balm. My mother's tears slid down her cheeks, glistening like pearls. Oh, how I miss the sound of your laughter. How I miss her voice trembled as her gaze flicked toward Noah, lingering on each of us with raw emotion. You all need to understand I was trying to shield you. I didn't want the sickness to dampen your spirits. It's time for honesty, Mom, I interjected gently, moving closer. We've been fragmented for too long. Lean into us. Let us carry some of that weight. In that moment, I saw the flicker of fear and guilt in her eyes give way to vulnerability, and it was as if the air itself shifted. You're right, she whispered, her resolve finally cracking. It's been so heavy, yet the weight of love should never be carried alone. A wave of resonance washed through every one of us, bridging the dark chasms of our past. We're fighting together now, remember? I said, caressing her hand, hoping to strengthen the fragile vessel that housed our family. We can face this storm together. With a shuddering breath, she nodded. Together. The word hung in the air like a spell, binding us in a promise we silently renewed. And amidst the tears and the storms, I felt something change, an understanding exchanged through shared grief. I grasped Olivia's hand tighter, anchoring each of us to this moment. The cacophony of medical beeping and whispers receded into the background, muted by the chorus of our family becoming whole again. As I looked into my mother's eyes, I could see a flicker of hope spark in the depths. I love you, she whispered, every syllable laced with the weight of years and the fragile skirting of hope. I love you, too, Olivia said, smiling despite her tears. And as we embraced her together, a warmth filled the room, chased out the fears like sunlight on rain. The storm may rage on outside, but within this room we had found each other, in a final bond, tangled yet resilient, weathering whatever storms lay ahead. In that emblematic moment, surrounded by the tempest of uncertainty, I learned perhaps the greatest truth of all, that love is what ultimately binds us, and together we could navigate the darkest of nights. Wherever this takes us, I whispered softly into the night, we'll face it together. And from the depths of my heart, I quietly vowed that no matter how harsh the storm, we would never allow our family to crumble under its weight again. It was love that would illuminate our path forward, a beacon through even the darkest storms.